welcome to Pet Business Disruptors. I'm here today with Greg West, who is the owner of Cornell's World, the promoter for the WCRE, West Canadian Reptile Expo, and was the main guy in the Animal Planet program Scaled. How's it going, Greg?
Good. Thanks for having me. It's been a while. I was hoping to see you this year.
Yeah, man. Yeah, honestly, I loved it when I came over. It's just this year we've kind of sidestepped into more insect breeding rather than retailing. So I've just had all my time sort of taken up just producing black soldier fly larvae. So yeah, I'd have loved to have come over again.
No, it's good to hear you're busy.
Yeah, I had a great time. I had a great time when I was over.
We like having our shows, but we like to entertain. So that's a big part of our reptile kind of expos that we host. So, and kind of what we've been known for over the years.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, what I love about reptile shows compared to any other shows is just the level of there's like a weird brotherhood amongst people who show at the shows. There's like the community is awesome. I mean, like you'd never seen me before. I'd sort of rock up and we all went to dinner and we're out all night and that sort of stuff. And it's like a really good vibe, like when you do a reptile show.
Yeah. Well, it becomes a community. And I mean, that's what it's all about. And definitely makes the shows more enjoyable when everybody's among friends and, you can hang out after the show.
Yeah. So Greg, let's fling it back. How did you get into all this? What made you think Cornell's World? That's the tip.
I guess if we take it way back, I grew up. My parents were farmers, and I did have a couple anoles growing up, and so that was kind of my first foray into reptiles. And obviously back, I'm not young, and so a long time ago, being 13. You've got an anole with a heat rock, not understanding UV, and their lifespans were a lot shorter back then because nobody really knew how to care for them properly. So, they maybe lasted me a year, and I kind of drifted in and out of sports, and then didn't really get into reptiles again till I was in college. Well, now I don't have parents that can tell me what I can and can't have, so I started getting some reptiles, and I bought a couple at a pet store. I bought one at a pet store that was wild caught, and it literally lasted a week. And then they owed me some money, so I got a giant day gecko from there. And that kind of got the addiction started. And I happened to be driving somewhere one day, and there was a road sign just saying Reptile Expo. And so I happened to have time, so I stopped by there, and somebody had a pair of giant day geckos, so I bought these two, and now I got to build reptile cages. And I started working at a glass company, so that gave me access to glass, and so I started building my own terrariums, and then being associated with that one reptile show, they kind of asked, would you be interested in coming to the reptile show and displaying? And well, why would I display if I could try and sell? So that kind of started, selling one or two reptile cages for a little bit of cash, and, being young still and not having much expenses, some beer money. And that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah, man. And like I say, as you've got along, you've got deeper and deeper, right? So you started off obviously with the expos, and then when did you decide to transfer that into a shop? And
it kind of just grew from there. I was maybe doing 20 at most cages in a year, and it just kept growing and growing. And then obviously as I'm doing one reptile show, then there's other reptile shows in surrounding cities. So then I was doing just not one. Well, there was 2 reptile shows here, and then there's 2 in Edmonton. So now I'm up to 4 reptile shows, and then another city added one. So then I was 5. But just obviously my business is mostly word of mouth. So the more I sell and keep these customers happy, they told their friends, and the business started growing. And in 2019, I think in the UK, you guys have a show with the same name, Dragon's Den, where
Yeah.
businesses kind of pitch their ideas and try and get investors. And in 2013, I was selected to pitch to them in Canada, and I got a deal on the show. But what you see on the show isn't always exactly what happens. But I backed out of the deal after filming. And what I guess the best part about doing that pitch was the fact that I realized that people actually believed my business was worth what I was asking. And I was still somewhat young and decided to take a chance. So I quit my full-time job, and then I've been doing it full-time ever since.
Yeah, that like the Dragon's Den thing. Like, so I know people who've done the UK one, and there's a hell of a lot of those deals that don't actually go through, like whether it's due diligence or whether people then make the decision against it, like later on. But it's a lot more like reality TV, isn't it, than it is actually reality, if you know what I mean. So
it is. I mean, it's made to look good on TV, but most of the time you never hear what the follow-up of what actually happened. And most of the time nothing does happen. And you don't even deal with the people that you're pitching to, you deal with their people once it gets to the next stage. And they phoned me up and said, we need you to do monthly reporting with accounting, and we need to see that what you told us is true. And I said, that's fine, but like, I'm one guy running this business, and I give my accounting receipts and everything to somebody one time a year. Like, I'll do what you're asking me to, but it's going to cost me money. And if you're not interested in investing and actually working with me to build the business, and just a handout every month that I got to pay you X amount, then I'll just go to the bank and get a loan. And I never heard from him again. So that's what I did. I went to the bank and got a loan.
See, in the UK, it's kind of different, because we have this thing called SEI funding, which is, if I've never received like investment funding before, the investors get like something like an 50% tax relief on the first 250 grand that goes in, and then if the business then goes bankrupt, they get up to 86% back, which is why they have such high valuations on these programs, and why they're a lot more willing to actually put that in. Does Canada have something like that, or?
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
I
honestly, I wouldn't know from that side of things, because I was the guy with the handout, so I don't know. I haven't. That's new. Like, I've never heard anything like that before, but there might be incentives for them to do it.
Yeah, we have that over here, which is why you have this whole investor economy, where people are saying, I've got a business that is making no revenue, but it's worth 5 million quid. And you're like, I mean, look, how is that worth 5 million quid? But it's worth 5 million quid because they get most of their money back if it actually succeeds, or if it actually fails. Yeah. And even if it succeeds, they get 50% of their money back. So it's kind of a bit of a bullshit thing, really. But like, so how did
Sounds like I need to pitch Dragon's Den in the UK.
Yeah, man, set up a UK company and pitch them over there. Although, to be honest, I'd rather live in Alberta than over in the UK, to be honest.
Well, I've got family in Ireland, so I know how wet and cold it is. I think I'm in a better place other than the winter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, that does get damn cold there in the winter. So, like, if you sort of pivot from that, like, the sort of next like bit of TV you had was like having your own show, which is pretty wild for somebody in the reptile sort of industry to have their business chosen.
Well, I mean, to kind of spill a little TV magic, it's just funny how the show actually happened. Like, honestly, we talked about, like, it'd be awesome to have a TV show on seeing like Tanked, which was the aquarium equivalent of what we were trying to do. But none of us have any sense of TV or who to approach, or, honestly, the money to spend trying to pitch a TV idea. And at the time, we had a friend who worked for me that was maybe somewhat of an alcoholic. And some days we would not get much work done. And on a Friday afternoon in the summer, we decided to go to a patio instead of getting work done. And as the drinks kept flowing, we thought we were funnier and funnier. And, we were saying like, we should have a TV show. And, obviously that kind of thing never happens. But literally the next day when I'm trying to kind of retrace my steps on the day and see what I missed out on through email, there was a TV producer who emailed me and said, "Hey, we're trying to produce this show and we think you guys would be a good fit." And I thought it was bullshit. I emailed my buddy and said, "There's no way this is real." And I thought maybe one of them were messing with me. And so I looked up the company name, and it was a legit company, and they actually had a hit on their hands. They were the producers of Lip Sync Battle. So I immediately responded to him and said, "What do you need from us? Like, how do we get this going?" And I think they had a couple companies like that they had talked to, and a lot of people, like a lot of the businesses that are similar to me in the US are probably older people, and they just like didn't really want to do it. And they thought we had good energy. And so we did a couple like video chats back and forth. And then that got kind of greenlit. And then we had to do kind of a proof of concept video. So they came here and they filmed and pitched it to the network. And they said, it all looks good, but can they do what they say they can? So then they flew them out here again and videoed another, like basically created a pitch video where we actually built a crazy enclosure. And of course it was like a pool table with an enclosure underneath, which was, not realistic in the sense that it was going to be good for animals, but it was kind of a made for TV type enclosure. And so they pitched that to the network, and it took, quite a while longer. And then we got word that it was approved, and I think we got greenlit for 10 episodes, 10 1-hour episodes. And I think we started in May, and it like filming, and it ended in basically the end of August, maybe mid-September. So that's how long the time frame it was. And like, it was a lot of work, and it was pretty much like no days off.
Jeez. Because
so I wasn't home. Basically, I was home to sleep a couple hours, and that was about it.
Because like you're running your own business as well at the same time, right? As well as filming and doing this stuff, or did you?
Well, and that was the hard thing. My business pretty much just shut down. Yeah, my business was basically shut down during filming, which I couldn't do that now because I'm way bigger than I was back then. But that was the biggest worry for me is seeing reality shows and knowing what Tanked was about. It seemed a bit gimmicky, but what I worried about is, in the legal sense of the contract for the show is anything they capture on film, they can portray on TV. So, if we could be made to look like idiots if they thought that it was going to be good for TV. Luckily, they edited all the idiot stuff we did out, but it was a little worrisome because at the end of the day, this was my business, and whether this show succeeded or failed, I still have a business to come back to at the end, and I didn't want the business portrayed negatively if it went that way. So thankfully it worked out in the end. But again, even with the TV side of things, the build, some of them were rushed too much, and they just wanted it to look good for TV, but they didn't really necessarily listen all the time about our concerns of, doing this or that. So it was definitely a learning experience. And then hoping that we got a season 2, we were really hopeful we'd have a little more control and say over what we would and wouldn't do, but we didn't get that chance, unfortunately.
Because that must be the thing, is like the animal welfare aspect of reptile keeping must go out the window because to some degree, because it's like
yes, I mean it does a little bit. We held strong on those types of things, but in my like, I build reptile cages for a living. I know what's going to work and what isn't, and making things flashy, and like, for example, the one build I hated most was like a princess castle for ball pythons. And it's like, I did not want to do this at all. It just didn't make sense. It was fine in terms of size of caging and everything, but it was just so gimmicky that I just hated doing it. But now I've got to smile in front of the camera and like present this god awful build that I don't know. I think the customer did like it. She was pretty excited about it, but like I was just worried that everybody was going to light us up. And actually, we did get a lot of hate from the UK on that build specifically, just because you guys have a lot more stringent restrictions on cage sizing and minimum sizes.
Like,
and for our acceptable standards, it was fine, but I can understand where the hate's coming from.
Yeah, so over here we're a hell of a lot more strict. So like, we really only have one big reptile show over here. Is called the IHS Reptile Show, and they've had to move venue a number of times because of animal welfare protesters and that sort of stuff. So that's why like going to America, going to Canada is like as someone who's involved in that sort of side of things is a relief, because there's so much more freedom. Because like in America you have like USARC. I don't know if they get involved with Canada at all, but it's a lot.
They don't. We have a smaller version, but USARC at least, like they've got really good financial backing, and they have been active in fighting these laws and restrictions. Canada's been, I mean, it's coming everywhere, honestly, as the industry gets more popular. I mean, these pet welfare groups, or terrorist groups, as I like to call them, they start taking notice and start like, we haven't seen them so much at our reptile shows, but that doesn't mean they won't be there in the future. And, we still get the negative comments on, when we're advertising shows that these animals shouldn't be kept in cages and that sort of thing. But it's always a worry in the back of our minds that these people are going to take the rights away of the reptile owners, for sure.
Yeah, and look, the trouble is like the internet's a cesspit anyway. I mean, look, I'm involved with insects, so every time we put out like a generalized post, we'll get people saying we're being funded by WEF and all this sort of stuff. So it's kind of, people are pretty insane, but it's the insane ones who get heard the loudest,
I think the worst part of everything is everybody on the internet's an expert.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. That is the problem with the internet, though, is that you don't need to have any qualifications to make like a sweeping generalization, do you? So like, how was the actual filming? Like, because obviously when you watch it, it's very polished, but it's very polished in like, I watched it in like, it's very kind of American. It's sort of like the cutaways where you're all standing there chatting about something, and it will cut away and you're sort of talking separately. In like it's something you're talking, like there's something going on in your head and you're just getting it out there. I mean, how strained was it? Was it like one takes, or was it like brutal, sort of like over and over again?
Oh, not for me. It depended, it depended on the situation. So sometimes some people would get them in one take, and it depended. Like, if I was hopped up on Red Bull or a couple drinks, and then I was way more relaxed and able to, be candid and be able to have that quick thought and reply and showing the energy. But I mean, sometimes you're repeating something over and over 4 or 5 times, and the more you repeat it, the more you're frustrated with yourself, and it doesn't usually go that well.
So did you find
it's interesting, like from that side of, sorry.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, go on. Sorry. Go on. Carry on.
Oh, sorry. Like the crazy thing is, for a 1-hour episode, they said that they basically scoured through about 200 hours of footage between all the cameras and all the takes and everything. And that's what it would take to make 1-hour episode of TV. And when you're filming, you're a little concerned, I might have looked weird, or I might have said something different. But generally, a lot of that gets cut out anyways. Like, you don't have to worry that you caught yourself saying something wrong or whatever, because likely a lot of that stuff, like a lot of it gets cut out. Like there was a lot of stuff through filming that we thought would be amazing to see, and a lot of it never even sees the light of day, because they know what they're looking for in the producing sense, and they know what's good for TV, and anything that was maybe questionable, or because we're a family show, too much swearing or any of that stuff that they know to look for ends up just, on the cutting room floor. And even after the show was canceled, there were specific things that we wanted to see. And once they move on to another project, they like, it's just dead to them. Like, it's just like nothing. They, even though they'll never use it and they don't care anymore, like, you still don't get to see it.
Oh, really? So you had no rights to any of the like the cut stuff or anything?
Nothing.
Like that?
No, I think the more you, the more that you, the more seasons you get under your belt, you start getting more, I guess, control over things. Like, if they were to do merchandise in year 1 to 4, basically they had full ownership and we didn't get anything. But after year 4, there was the right to negotiation before getting a new contract. And then you can start taking a little bit of control. Like, Tank, for example, had, I don't know, I think 13 seasons. Well, I think it was like 13 years worth of seasons, but some years were like 2 seasons of filming. And, they were making a lot of money on merchandise. They weren't paying for equipment. Like, there's all these sponsorship deals and everything that you start making money off of after you've kind of proven that show is viable.
I mean, did you see anything like that? I mean, what was it like economically? Because you kind of assume that if you're getting a TV show, it's going to be okay.
No, because basically once you're in year 1, you're basically getting paid kind of like, my shop was getting paid a bit of money because we were basically not able to make an income through the shop. So they were covering expenses, and then kind of all the cast were getting paid a bit, but it wasn't like show business money by any means. It's just like kind of, per episode we get paid X amount, and it was just like to cover your time basically. But yeah. I mean, it was still worth it. And the fact that there was potential to move forward and everything was, everybody was hanging on for a season 2 because, we could be movie stars, we could be A-listers, or, I mean,
that's right.
We thought we were pretty big deals coming to some reptile shows. That ain't happening anytime soon. But, the thought was always there, if we got further along, that, we'd start getting free concert tickets or getting invited to meet and greets, like being the stars. But we had a good run, and like during the shows after it was out, we did the Reptile Super Show, which is probably, in my opinion, from what I've seen, is the biggest show in North America. And it was really cool for people to like recognize us and want our autographs and that sort of thing. But I mean, we're still like, we're still just a bunch of idiots from Calgary just wanting to have fun whenever we can.
I mean, so do you think, like, I mean, did it help the business long term? Was it a net positive in that sense, or did you find, like, because obviously, like,
I think so. I mean, obviously, like, the year after we came out of that, it didn't grow like I thought it would, and I kept people on, and paying expenses, but it was still like a fun business. And after that, it started, the realization set in that, like, I got to figure something out. Like, I got to run this as a real business, and I got to worry about income. I got to grow this business. And so we had kind of one tough year the year after. And then that was, the year before COVID hit. And then COVID hit and everything kind of went sideways, in the sense that, a lot of businesses were shutting down because they couldn't operate it. But, manufacturing was a necessity, or however they worded it, so we could continue working. And with everybody being home, they wanted pets. So, like, the pet industry just went crazy. Yeah. And then the supply side of things was, like, we've got all these orders, but now we can't get supplies. So it was like a juggling act of, whenever something was available, we're buying all of it to try and get ahead of the competitor. But like, the order pile was like 2 inches thick, and it's like, I don't know how we're going to get, we're telling people it's like 8 to 12 weeks to get something that should be done in a week, but we're just so busy. So COVID was great for us. The show, the exposure was great. And there was a lot of things in the pipeline that if we got season 2, that it would have been huge for us. But I mean, we've grown the business since, and I think we're on a stable ground now, or at least hanging on anyways. But it definitely, it took the business, like where we're at now compared to where we were when we started is probably double. So it's been good.
Because that's the thing, where you are is, like, for anyone who doesn't know where Calgary is, it's not like near anywhere particularly big. It's a pretty remote area, I would say. And like, just from logistically running a business, it makes it hard. It makes it hard in terms of when you're working inside a niche, but also just getting supplies across. So the fact that you're building and building is impressive, considering like just your geographical location. So, I mean, do you find that most of your work is still like Alberta based, or is it coming from all over?
Yeah, I'd say my biggest provinces are Alberta and Ontario, and then BC is pretty big for us. But like, this is a way different market. Like, if I was in the US, there's just, the population is so much denser in the US that definitely, it would probably be a business of a bigger size, just because there's so many more people to sell to. But our exchange rate now isn't that great. So I do get, a decent amount of orders from the US just because the exchange works out in their favor. But I'm a small fish in a big pond when you're talking North America, but I'm basically one of, I would say, 4 PVC manufacturers in Canada, one out in Ontario, and then there's 3 or including myself, there's 3 in Alberta, and we kind of service the whole Canadian market.
Yeah, because I mean, Canada is so concentrated in Ontario, really, that like the rest of the country is. I mean, I forget what the population of Toronto is, but was it the third biggest city in North America or something crazy like that? It's a pretty populous area, and like obviously when I drove through
like
Alberta,
I think in Calgary here we're like over 1 million.
Okay, it's bigger than I thought, actually. I mean, I haven't been to Calgary. I only went to Medicine Hat.
It is. And I warned you. I'm like, are you sure this is the one you want to do? Because we got this bigger one, and you're like, no, I'm traveling so much, and that one didn't work out. But yeah, when you emailed me, I'm like, man, we need to get him to Calgary because that's a way better show.
I mean, to be honest, the trouble is when you're in my boat is you're just trying to fit everything in continuously. And I gotta be honest, there's an element of me wanting to go to Medicine Hat just because the name's hilarious, if I'm honest. I mean, it's up there with Moose Jaw in terms of my favorite names of Canadian cities. So it was like, if nothing else, even if it's a disaster, at least I've been to Medicine.
Well, you'll have to come back because there's a lot more funny names than just those couple.
Yeah, man. Yeah, like, so, I mean, obviously, like,
there's Dildo Newfoundland if you haven't ever Googled that one.
I mean, to be honest, I quite fancy going to Newfoundland because don't they still speak like traditional Irish or something crazy like that there? It's a pretty, and it had a history of independence up until like the 50s or something. It was only after the Second World War that I think they joined Canada. So it's Newfoundland's definitely on my list of places to visit. So yeah, like, so the reptile expos, when did you start getting involved with that? Because obviously, like, yeah, running I think like
from the start I was vending, and then I like the idea of the reptile expos, and obviously I started with vending them, and then there was basically a promoter at one point in time decided that he couldn't put on one that year, and me and some friends were like kind of setting up for another show and having a few drinks, and we're like, everybody wants to have a show and it sucks that he's canceled it, like, let's us just do one. And so we did the one, and then that was probably in like 2010, and it became a staple in Red Deer, another funny name, but it was the kind of the center point between Calgary and Edmonton. And we kind of thought that, if we were right in the middle between the two, we'd draw people from both cities. And so we did that show in Red Deer for, I want to say it was like 12 years. And then the venue was changing and they were knocking it down or changing it to a casino. And so we knew we were going to have to find a new place. And, that many years that we've done the show, and no matter what we did with advertising, it always seemed like there'd be 2,500 people through the door. And, that the city that it was in is small potatoes compared to Calgary with like 1.2 million or however many people. It just made sense to move the show to Calgary. So we just actually had year 2 in Calgary, and it was busy. It was a good show.
Yeah. And like I say, I think like for me, reptile expos are like the lifeblood of the whole industry. Like, and like this, I think they're so important in terms of bringing us together as a community, but also for seeing what's new out there. It's a great way of getting new products out there, actually getting like real time sort of like validation from customers and talking to people about different ideas. So like for me, they're so important, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great for the vendors and, exposure, but it's great for the patrons that find out about it too. Because, I mean, those are the experts. So those are the people that you should be learning about proper reptile care and husbandry. And, pet stores have their place for sure, but generally they're minimum wage workers who don't necessarily know. They're just told we need to sell. Whereas at these expos, they're about education as well as, trying to sell, but selling the right products, not just what makes you the most money.
Yeah. I mean, look, reptiles is so knowledge heavy. I mean, like I have a knowledge of reptiles, but I would not consider myself a reptile expert by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I know a lot about insects, but when it comes to, what should I do for, what kind of heat and, like enrichment do I need for, let's say, a skink or something like, I don't know, because I've never kept them, and they're so, everyone is so like individual in terms of like what you need to do with it. So actually being able to speak to people when you actually make the purchase of the reptile is so important, so
it is. And then the nice thing too about the reptile shows, sorry.
No, carry on.
The nice thing about the reptile shows too is the diversity that no worries. The reptile diversity at the shows is another great thing. Like pet stores are geared towards selling the reptiles that are popular and what are going to sell. But, not everybody's into a ball python or a crested gecko and seeing, monitor species or painted agamas or stuff that are a little less common. I mean, that's where you're going to see it is at these reptile shows, because the people breeding them have an interest in these specific species. And you're not going to see those ever in a pet store. Like you might see them in zoos. So, the best way to see the biggest variety in a reptile is at these reptile expos.
Yeah. And do you know one thing I do think as well is that they're underutilized by brands as well. I know, ZooMed are very big supporters of reptile expos, but outside of that, you don't really see reptile brands really getting behind it. So, and I think that's a massive loss because there's a lot of really good like reptile companies out there, but I feel like there needs to be like way more brand exposure, like because again, you have like people who breed reptiles who like build terrariums, but it would be good to see more manufacturers, more distributors actually present and taking stands, even if it's not even. I
agree.
Yeah, I mean, which is why I think when we sort of produced our product, I went out and I did them because I feel like it's such an important thing to actually get in front of the customer and actually explain the product, because there's so many good products out there that you can't just expect vendors to actually understand it. And to be honest, I think that's why ZooMed do such a good job.
Yeah, ZooMed's invested a lot of money into the industry with their support in reptile expos, with their support in like groups like USARC, and they're a staple in the community. And Exoterra, like Hagen as well, is fairly involved at that end too. But yeah, it would be nice to start getting more of these manufacturers involved on the I guess the face of the products as well. And it's funny because for our show just happening last weekend, we had a pet store approach us, and I said, they said, how can we get involved? And I said, honestly, like, you don't want to come into a reptile show and try to sell. What you want to do is sell your business, give out coupons and push the brand and just be available. And I think it would grow, the sales leading or after the show, that, after all these shows are over and these people are gone, these people still need supplies. They still need feeders, and you handing out your business cards at the show, they're going to remember that you were there, and, oh yeah, maybe I can deal with this company after the fact. So the reptile expos are great, but they're not always about that sale right now, but it's that branding and that sort of thing that definitely helps build these businesses after the fact.
100%. And look, that was always my main. I think I said to you when you said don't come to Medicine Hat because it'll be quiet. I was like, I'm not there to sell. I couldn't care less if I sell nothing, to be honest. For me, it was just about meeting people, like talking to people about products. And it's the best sort of environment to do it because, like, people can walk away, they can talk to you in that environment, but you're all there for the same thing, as opposed to sort of like in normal day-to-day life, if I just phoned you up and I was like, you didn't know me, and I'm like, let me send you some product. You're a bit like, do you know what I mean? Whereas if I'm there and I'm talking and like we just hang out of an evening, it's a very different sort of thing, And I think it's something a lot more brands should.
Well, it's funny. Just to add to that, with you coming to Medicine Hat, had you not come to Medicine Hat, none of the vendors there would have known your product at all, and even me buying some of the ones that you had left over to sell through my business. Your product sold at the show because you had it set up to show people how it worked and what it did, and kind of it was a proof of concept in a sense where people saw. So I've had it at shows since, and they never sell, but that's just because I don't dedicate space to them to have a setup and show, because I'm more focused on trying to just push products, and I have limited floor space. But the way you had it set up, being a brand or a manufacturer, I mean, that did work for you. You took a chance with doing that show, not knowing any of us out here or who was going to be in attendance. And realistically, whether you sold 4 or 400 at that show to the retail market, like, you made connections with people on the business side of things that were interested in your product, and it ended up working out. Like, you didn't go home with any. So it ended up working for you, taking a chance doing that with the show. And it would be nice to see more manufacturers doing, displays at trade shows and making them actual trade shows versus, I liken a lot of the reptile trade shows to flea markets, because they're not they're not super professional. They're not these big booth spaces. Sometimes they're as simple as just an 8-foot table with a bunch of deli cups on it. But I think the market's growing and learning how to be more professional and how to represent the product and represent themselves a lot better.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like the main thing is like people buy people as well. So if you are a brand, if you're like, let's say Arcadia, or you're, Komodo or Flukers, or one of the many brands, just actually having a presence and having somebody there who can talk to people, show the products, chat about it. It's not about selling. It's just go out for drinks. I mean, we had like a great night out at the end of it, and that's what it's about. It's like, for me, that, because then you're like, I can phone you up and ask you to come on the podcast, like, just randomly, because we've hung out. It's a different feeling to like if it was like just like a straightforward, I'm a business, you're a business kind of relationship, and we don't really know each other. Do you know what I mean? That was a whole other thing. I'm a lunatic.
Yeah.
You've been out on me for the evening.
Yeah. No, I mean, your first thing you said hit the nail on the head is, people believe in people. And I think that's kind of the cornerstone of my business and how I've done, I guess, so well and lasted this long because locally here, you know, I wouldn't say I definitely wasn't the start of the industry, but if I think back to when I started, I can count on two hands how many people are still in the industry. And, I liken it to the fact that, I'm hardworking and trustworthy and I am the face of the business. And even when I was pitching to Dragon's Den, the guy who gave me the deal, he said, I have no clue what you do. Like none of what you're saying makes sense, but I believe in your passion behind what you're telling me. And I'm basically putting my investment into you. So, I mean, that's how I see my business as being, as successful and long lasting as it's been is just, dumb luck, hard work, and a dedication to always represent my name as positively as I can and stand by what I do. There's a lot of fly by nighters that, look great to start, but they get vetted out pretty quick. And generally a lot of these people 1 to 2 years later, you never hear from them again.
Yeah, and look, I mean, like I've been in the industry my whole life, and like, I've obviously seen people come and go, and if you don't actually have, this is one of those industries where if you don't have a real passion for it, you don't last because the money's not brilliant, and like we could be, you could be doing something else if it's just for the money. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like I've never been driven by the financial aspect, and it's kind of a disgusting thing to do. I mean, I used to work with like, body parts of animals. Now I work with insects. I mean, this is about as disgusting as it gets, really, when you think about a job, So it's, I'm not doing it because because there's any glamour to it, It's just I love doing what I do. I love the pet industry. I love seeing things work, and And if I wasn't like that, I'd have been out years ago. And I think most of the people who fly in because they think the next boom is in the pet sector, they fly out again quite quickly.
Yeah. My business is the same way. Like, when I was done the filming for Dragon's Den, I was at a crossroads. Like, I wasn't really happy at my full-time job just because, this was like my passion was doing this. And I kind of had to make a decision, like, do I want the money or do I want what I enjoy? And I was still young enough that if it didn't pan out, that I could probably go back to, somewhere in a similar industry or go back to what I was doing. But luckily it's worked out so far.
So what do you see like the future? Do you see like you expanding further or like looking at new markets, or are you just kind of happy with where you're at?
Well, I mean, ideally, I'd love to see me retired somewhere, but I don't think that's happening anytime soon. But, the industry is growing and technology is changing. And I think, like, for me personally, having a CNC with being able to cut PVC and do custom stuff that way, that was kind of on the forefront and being ahead of the game. But stuff is catching up and, products are changing and new technology. So I hope to grow it. Obviously, having a business that just sits stagnant is on a limited lifespan, but it's weird because, the industry, or not the industry, but like the economy in general is just in the shit. So nobody's got that extra disposable income for the pet side of things anymore. So like right now it's kind of in a holding pattern and just hoping to survive, the downturn in spending and then hopefully we see a resurgence, to the volumes we were doing in COVID times.
Yeah. I mean, look, whenever the economy's bad, it's always bad for everyone, but there's winners and losers. I think it's always a thinning out process. This is always a cycle we go through where everyone's killing it. And, like COVID, everyone was killing it and you could be an absolute moron at your job and you were killing it. But now we're going into tougher times, and once you go through that, you'll thin out, let's say, the weaker competition or the people who shouldn't be doing it, and then you'll get stronger again because it's all cyclical. As long as you do your job properly continuously, then you're always good,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So Greg, like, give us your pitch on your business, on like why people should be buying from you. Like, so anyone who's listening, who's interested in like what you do, so the custom terrarium side or whatever else you're pushing at the moment, just give us your like pitch on your business.
Well, I mean, I guess longevity wise, I've been around forever, and I stand by my product. So that's the biggest thing is, whenever there's an issue, I try and help the customer as much as I can. And I'm willing to work with the customer to create that ultimate cage or design or whatever they've got in their mind to suit their animal as well as what they want themselves. So obviously it's got to be visually appealing for the customer, but it's also got to work for the reptile itself. So, I've been around long enough that I've got a decent knowledge of the reptiles and what they need. So I can, I'm definitely helpful in that sense of, reaching out and customers with questions on what they need or what I would suggest. I'm kind of always there for them in that sense to try and build that relationship with these customers, and then, by word of mouth, growing the business that way.
Yeah, man. And look, if they want to get in contact with you for Cornell's World, what's the best way of doing it?
Either phone or email. Generally, I'm pretty busy during the day, so email's the easiest, as well as it gives me time to, draft up a good response, not just a candid, quick one. But yeah, I'd say email, phone are the two main methods of contact. Social media.
So that's like just so people know, it's quotes@cornellsworld.com, right? Is that right?
Yep.
And
the contact info is on the website as well, and I think it's probably on social media.
Yeah, sure. I'll get them to put in the show notes anyway. And like for WCRE, have you got any more shows planned this year, or is it already done till next year?
No, right now we're doing 2 shows, and then kind of the dates are similar to what they were this year. We've got a smaller show in Medicine Hat, Alberta, and the larger show is in Calgary, Alberta. And that show is the one to go to, honestly. It's the biggest one in Western Canada. So if you're ever in anywhere surrounding, it's definitely a show to go to. This year we really expanded on the interactive section. So we had a lot of exotic animals that people could interact with, and face painters and just stuff for families, not just, it wasn't just a market where everybody's trying to sell. So we've really grown the way that we're putting on this show now, and it's definitely a cool one to check out.
And I think like what you just said there about like having the other activities. I mean, like I've been to obviously Tinley, Super Show, that sort of stuff. But I'll be honest with you, look, Jeff Hoffman, like I love what he does in like the PAC and WRS ones, because he puts on a lot of other
crazy.
Do you know what? I love those guys. They are fucking nuts, but I love them. Like, they had, when I was there, I was in Seattle.
Yeah. Well, guess who they asked for advice when they were starting their show? We went down there and we're helping them with their very first show.
But that's what I mean. You guys have a very similar vibe in terms of how your shows are, in terms of the community, how it's very community led. And that's why I love going to your guys' show, and I love going to theirs, because there's just like such a strong community thing. But also if you're like, it's like there's a family of 4 goes to the reptile show now. Not everyone might want to go to that reptile show, is the reality. But like, if you've got like face painting at yours, or some crazy rodeo ball at Jeff's, and like baby kangaroos and God knows what else he had at the one I was there, it just makes it a much better day out for everyone. So, like the people who are really into the reptiles can talk to the vendors, they can get their stuff, they can get their supplies, but also it's an event as well, So because look, you're doing that, it's your whole day. Yep. What you don't want to see is just like a load of tables, nothing else, because you can be like, well, that was 20 minutes and I'm done. So it's having more of an event. And I love that about what he does and like what you guys do, because again, it's all about a community. It's all about having an event. And I would say, like, just for like brands that are out there, to get involved in these sort of events is so important, because it strikes such a chord on the grassroots level, like all the way up. So being involved in these at Reptile Expos is so important. It's so important for like actually understanding. I mean, look, like after the Medicine Hat one, we went to that guy's shop. We were all talking about products. We were talking about distributors you didn't like, and just the understanding that sort of stuff is so important for manufacturers, man. Is because you can see your whole business go down the tubes and you're not sure why, you know. Whereas if you actually hang out with the guys who are selling it, it makes a massive difference, you know. So I'd really recommend anyone out there who isn't already involved just to get involved with getting on there. And so what's the website for WCRE? Is it
WCRE.ca? We made it simple and easy to remember. So it's basically the acronym of Western Canadian Reptile Expo.
Cool.
Super original.
And like they're not expensive to show at. I can't remember what I paid, but I know it wasn't a lot of money, right?
No, I mean, you're paying less than going to a zoo, that's for sure. And you're seeing way more like variety in animals, like from the reptile sense anyways.
But even from like the vendor's point of view, it's really cheap to exhibit there, right? I mean, I forget what a table cost me.
Yeah. And it depends on the show. Like, you know, we're not getting rich putting on these shows, and the vendors also, you know, a lot of these vendors, at least locally here, a lot of them are doing it out of their houses, more of a hobby than a business. So obviously, you know, they're not going to be able to afford to spend $1,000 on a table when they're maybe they sell one leopard gecko, maybe they sell none, but like, so it's got to be reasonable for those kind of up and comer breeders. So we try and keep it along those lines and try to attract, you know, up and comers as well as like youth. That's one thing that I really like to see, is when you've got like a kid who's bred a couple leopard geckos that is getting involved in the hobby. Like, you want to harbor that, like you want to help grow that passion with that kid so he continues, because, you know, maybe 10 years down the road, he's one of those big businesses that somehow figures it out and, you know, starts making some new crazy morph and doing big things in the industry.
No, definitely. And that's the thing, is that everybody starts from small beginnings, and it's about having something they can get involved in is so important, because, you know, it's that first sort of step of business. It's that first step of actually talking to customers and saying, like, what are people really interested in? It's so important, you know, so 100%. Like, that's what I mean, is for me, the expos are so important.
I remember when I first started. Yeah, I agree. I remember when I first started doing the reptile shows, like I was one of the younger, you know, new guys, and I just had a booth, and I was lucky to sell a cage or two, maybe 3 or 4. And I was just blown away that there was vendor booths there that was making, you know, selling 10,000 or like, you know, 15 or 20,000. Like, to me, I was happy if I was making $500. But now I'm on the other side of things where I'm doing it for a living. And, you know, a lot of those things I probably learned along the way by seeing what other people are doing. And, you know, whether it was learning from their mistakes or learning what they were doing to be successful. And those shows are also good for that too, as these up and comers see what they're doing and they get involved. And now they start making more contacts and learning more about the hobby and the industry and the animals especially. And it just keeps growing.
Yeah. And you can always say to them, like, you know, start off like this and you might get your own TV show one day.
I think that's more along the lines of drink too much and believe in yourself, and dumb luck happens sometimes.
Like, anyway, Greg, awesome, man. Like, really appreciate this. Really appreciate you, like, talking about everything. Like, I really appreciate you. I love all you guys. I like had a wicked time when I was in Medicine Hat, man. And yeah, thanks a million, dude.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And I'd love to do it again. And hopefully you make it back out to Alberta one day and we can get you to the big show.
Yeah, yeah, man.